All right, here are our 1.2a warm-up and notes. So what I would do, this warm-up is a review of Algebra 1 type material. So there are three different types of questions. I would suggest you pause this video and just try to do everything on the warm-up to the best of your ability. Anything you're stuck on, just wait. You can rewatch this. You can watch this video. But if you feel confident on the warm-up, you can then go ahead and just skip to the front side, fast forward the video, and you could do the notes. So go ahead and take a second, pause this video, and then try the warm-up. Okay, so hopefully you've had a chance to try the warm-up. We're going to go ahead and do this front part pretty quickly. All right, so problem number 1, determine if the following points are on the graph of the equation. So here's the equation I'm trying to check, and I want to plug in this for my x and my y. So I'm going to do part A first. 2 times -5 minus 4. And I'm trying to see if that equals 6. And you're either going to say, yes, it does, if the equations are equal, or you're going to say no if one side of this equation is not equal to the other. 2 times -5 is -10. Bring down the -4. Combine the -10 and the -4 to make a -14. That equals 6. No, it does not. So my answer here would be no. Part B, x and y. Plug that in. And I have a double negative here, so you got to be careful with that one. Double negatives always turn to a positive, so 4 plus 2. And 6 does equal 6, so that part would give me a yes. All right, on problem number 2, it's asking about the slope and the intercept. So for the slope and the intercept, you're going to make sure that it's in slope-intercept form. This one, y equals mx plus b, that's the form that we're looking for, slope-intercept form. And if you notice, part A is already in that format. So my slope is 3, or I could write it as 3 over 1. Remember, your slope is going to be rise over run. And then your y-intercept is going to be b. All right, so for your y-intercept, you're going to go down 5 on your y-axis. And then your slope of 3 means you'll go up 3 and forward 1. Up 3, forward 1, and continue to repeat that process. You could also go down 3 and backwards 1 to continue your line in the opposite direction. All right. For the next problem, you'll notice that we do not have that in the correct format. We want to turn this into y equals mx plus b. So you're going to add 6. You get 2y plus 3x equals 8. Then we're going to make sure we get the y by itself. So I'm going to subtract 3x and subtract 3x. 2y equals, and because the x is first in the y equals mx plus b formula, I'm going to go ahead and write my -3x first and follow it up with the 8. Divide everything by 2. And I get y equals -3 halves x plus 4. Now it's in slope-intercept form, and now I can find the slope and the intercept and graph. So my slope is -3 over 2. Notice it's a -3, but it is still a positive 2. And then my y-intercept is 4. I'm going to scoot in a little bit here. And I'm going to graph my y-intercept as positive 4, so I'm going to go up 4 on my y-axis. Then for your slope, you have a -3, so you're going to go down 3, but a positive 2, so you're going to move forward 2. Down 3, forward 2. Down 3, right 2. Down 3, right 2. And then you can change that up when you go backwards. You can go up 3 and backwards 2 to continue the line. Up 3 and backwards 2. Nice long straight line here. And there we go. All right. For the next one, you are naming points. As we name points, we name them as x, y points. Remember, your x-axis is to the right and to the left, and your y-axis is your up and down. So for point A, you should have 6, 1. I went over 6 and up 1. For point B, you should have 0, -4. I didn't move at all in my x direction, right or left, but I went down 4. Point C is 0, 0. We call that the origin. Point D, I went left 8, so negative 8, and up and down 0. Okay, let's take a look now at our actual notes. So for our notes here, we are talking about graphs and intercepts. So for our graphs and intercepts, we have two kinds of different problems here. We've got our graphs, and then we've actually got our equations down here, and we're going to solve these a little bit differently. So the first one, we're just going to look and find our intercepts. Now let's review. Intercepts are anywhere where it crosses, so your x-intercepts are anywhere where it crosses the x-axis. And remember, your x-axis is this way, horizontally. Your y-axis, y-intercept, anywhere where it crosses your y-axis. And your y-axis is your vertical axis. So your y-axis is up and down, here, and here. And then your x-axis is going to be horizontally here and here. So for each one, identify your x-intercepts. Let's do the x-intercepts first. So anywhere where it crosses this axis here, so the blue crosses right there, and it also crosses right there. So there's going to be two answers for this one. Now, even though you don't have all these tick marks labeled, based on the fact that this is a 3, you can tell that this would be then 2, and that would be 1. So 1, 0. Also over here, you have negative 3, negative 2, so that must be negative 1, 0. Our x-intercepts over here, 1, 2, and 3 of them. See if you can name all 3 of those points, please. All right, you should have named negative 2, 0, 0, 0, and positive 2, 0. Let's take a look at our y-intercepts. This one, when I look through here, I notice that the blue graph is not touching this green line at all. So I actually don't have any y-intercepts for problem number 1. For problem number 2, I notice as I draw my line here, I do have a point that crosses. It's the same point that crossed before on the y-intercept. It's 0, 0. So you'll notice for this example number 2, 0, 0 is both an x-intercept as well as a y-intercept. So if you're looking at a graph, all you have to do is just look horizontally and vertically and write the ordered pairs down where they cross. For examples 3 through 6, we have now equations instead of graphs. The good news is we don't have to graph these. So what we're going to do instead is we are going to, in order to find the x-intercept, you are going to plug in 0 for the y. And in order to find the y-intercept, we're going to plug in 0 for the x. So notice you're plugging it in for the opposite letter that you are trying to find. Let's take a look at this first one here, example 3. So I'm going to first work on finding my x-intercept. You don't need to, regardless of what format the equation is in, you don't need to solve anything. You don't need to add 3x, add 12 to both sides. You don't need to make the equation look any way. It is perfect the way it is. Just go ahead and plug in the numbers. So my x-intercept, plug in 0 for the y, 0 equals 3x minus 12. And from here, because it's the x-intercept, you're just trying to solve for x, get x by itself. Add 12. 12 equals 3x. And divide by 3. 4 equals x. Now, 4 equals x is a perfect answer, but make sure that you're aware that you can also write it as 4, 0 as an ordered pair. That's what most of our intercepts have looked like so far. So make sure you can write it in that format as well. All right, now let's take a look at our y-intercept. we're going to plug in a 0 for the x. So go back to the beginning equation, always back to the beginning. Y equals 3 times 0 minus 12. This time we're going to solve for y. So because the y is already by itself, all we have to do is simplify the right-hand side. 3 times 0 is 0, and 0 minus 12 is negative 12. So you have an answer 0, negative 12. Notice I'm putting the negative 12 in the x position and the 0 that I plugged in the y position. 0, negative 12. All right, one thing I want to point out, make sure that you don't accidentally write your two answers as one answer combined. So don't write 4, 0, and 0, negative 12 as 4, negative 12. This is bad. Don't do that. Okay, so when you write the two answers together, you actually create something that is not an answer at all. You need the zeros in there in order for them to represent intercepts. If you don't have zeros, you don't have intercepts. So make sure you don't write them together. All right, let's take a look at example number 4. Just going to switch my color here a little bit. X-intercept, Y-intercept. And I'm just going to plug it in. Again, I'm not going to try to do anything with the 2x plus 3y equals 6. You don't need to write it in a different format. Just plug your numbers in. All right, see if you can take a second and work through those. Find your answer for x and your answer for y, and try to write it as an ordered pair. Two separate ordered pairs. All right, you should have gotten answers as 3, 0, so x equals 3 for the x-intercept, and y equals 2, so 0, 2 for the y-intercept. Again, do not write it as 3, 2. Keep your answers separate. Examples number 5 and 6 have squares in them, exponents. So we've got kind of two special cases here I want you to be aware of. So first, our x-intercept. We're going to plug in a 0 for the y. So 0 equals x squared plus 4. Try to get the x by itself. And then we come to this part right here. And if you remember, in order to get rid of a square, you are going to need to square root. So in order to get rid of this square right here, you're going to have to square root both sides. And the square root and the square will cancel each other out. The thing about this right here, you actually cannot take the square root of a negative. Square rooting is asking what number times itself will get you that number. And there is no number that if you multiply it by itself, it will get you negative 4. If you try to type it into your calculator will give you an error message. So you can't square root negatives. So for this one, there is no x-intercept. Now, just because there's no x-intercept, it doesn't mean that you're done. You could still have a y-intercept. So let's take a look at the last part, your y-intercept. Plug in a 0 for the x. That one ends up being pretty simple to do. The y is already solved. 0 squared plus 4. 0 plus 4, which is just 4. So something can have one intercept and not have the other. Example number 6. Similar setup here with a square. See how far you can get on this problem. add 1. And then same situation, we have the square there, so we need to square root both sides. Square root and square cancel. But here, when I square root the 1, I actually can take the square root of it. So I'm thinking about what number times itself will get me 1. Well, there's actually 2 answers. Positive 1 times positive 1 is 1, and negative 1 times negative 1 is 1. So that's when the special plus or minus sign comes in. And then equals x. So my 2 answers here are positive 1, 0 and negative 1, 0. And those are my 2 x-intercepts. So that just means that it crosses the graph twice, which is similar to what happened on example number 1. Okay, now let's find our y-intercept. Plug in a 0 for the x. Take just 1 second, solve that out. Write your answer as an ordered pair. All right, you should get y equals negative 1, so your ordered pair is 0, negative 1. Okay, so let's recap. When you have a square root of a negative, you get no answer. When you have the square root of a positive, you get 2 answers. So it's just a couple things to keep in mind there. Again, can't square root negatives, and don't forget the plus or minus sign when you square root a positive. Okay, that's it for today. Nice job.